Directors would be over there, and the other staff would be over here. Man, it looked like it, there's the same number of audience chairs in the back. They've actually got a little more room. So let's, y'all just give us your input.
Why we're not going to have all that wasted space in the middle that you always had in the
And
past.
my first reaction is this room looks twice as big.
Yeah,
The, well, this is, I don't even know who all.
I'm not even sure I trust the director to be behind me.
Chris, and, so anyway, and then there'll be a podium. That's, we've always liked the informality of it, but when you have someone come in from outside, they never know where to stand.
Yeah,
There is no
sometimes
place
we go
to
back
stand.
here and, yeah.
So we're gonna try this, and if after tonight y'all say, we don't like it, we want it back like it was, well, it's no problem. It's, what do you say, Chris, you had a bad idea. So we'll see.
If we like it, it's very good. I can.
We will. Another thing that on our agenda is some development discussion. I want to just mention one thing to you, but I'll forget it if I don't mention it right now. I've neglected to tell you. The development, housing development that's going in down at South Main and South Pipeline.
The old skate place.
Yeah, where the old skating rink was. We've done some recognitions lately of some old time people, but there's a few that we've not really recognized. And so those streets down there, there's like 3 streets. I couldn't tell you which one is which, but one of them is Peyton Place or Lane or something in honor of Jimmy Helen. One of them is Trigg Lane or Street or something. That is the Trigg family, maybe Trigg Wright. And then the other one is Nail. The reason I bring that up is we're kind of reaching the end of opportunities. So we've got another opportunity coming up here, and this is the streets that are going in out there at the Dominion. Some of those streets have got historical names that we like a lot. For example, one of them that's already named is, I like to submit, I can't remember, the Grange Hall. But if there's other families that y'all want to suggest, and I'm not saying they have to have any part of the political process, just old families. You know, there's a McCormick. We've got lots of McCormicks.
Yeah.
But you get down there around where Leon lives, and you've got Slaughter Lane. Dr. Slaughter was a doctor here years ago. Maloney, the Maloney family. The Butler family names. So if there's any names that you don't think we've got properly honored, feel free to suggest those. The time is just in the next few weeks. So, you don't need an answer right now, but if you've got a suggestion, we'll open the mention tonight so that Saturday, if you have any suggestions, maybe we could bring them. Typically, the developers don't really care. You know, they don't want something silly,
Yeah.
but they want something that has some distinguished sound. But what got me thinking about this most recently, that development down there in South Main and South Pipeline, the 3 streets were named after his 3 children. And the developer's 3 children. And it was like, and there were different names. They're part of that, the Egyptian Coptic church. So we said we won't change those names, but we got that ability to do the site plan process. So anyway, we'll talk about that more Saturday, but just think about that as we go through here. One other thing, we got our report yesterday on our most recent mosquito testing. This goes on weekly, and we had 3 mosquitoes test positive for West Nile virus. One is in North Euless, one is in south of Harwood, and one is in West Euless, west of West Parkway. So we don't normally disclose the exact location publicly because we don't, it's really just indicative. It's not, there's no need to, if it's on my street, which it wasn't, there's no need scaring people in my neighborhood because it's not safe. It's not coming from the creek. And most likely it is coming. Most of them are along the creek. So we will be spreading we've already scheduled, we'll be spraying Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday night. We're currently on schedule to do that every other week. We've done that now for, when the third, or
This will be the fourth.
this will be the fourth, okay, so, and you'll see more spraying occur, throughout Dallas and Turner County as they begin to get, reports coming in.
Are our surrounding cities doing it?
Some of them do not spray at all. Some of them wait until they have a human cage or something that triggers them to spray. Some of them wait until someone will do it for them. And we have kind of taken a proactive approach to it the last several years. And,
But it's not prohibitively expensive either.
no, it's not.
It's very odd that the city would not.
Bedford doesn't do that.
That's not knowledge that is not sprayed at all.
And I don't think they have either.
So-
And I think Colleyville has.
I don't think Colleyville has, but,
Very odd.
Kay made the comment that we were talking about, we saw a truck outside, and she could tell a huge difference in the annoyance of mosquitoes. I mean, there's no, compared to years past, we just hardly ever see mosquitoes.
we do it in our house, but yeah, so we'll do that, and the reason we do it 3 times in a row is that that's based on the county health recommendation because of the hat so quick you get to adults and the next day you get another group of babies or, that sounds real bad, but it's one time I already do it. Sorry?
Large.
Larry, that sounds bad.
There you go.
Yeah, so, anyway, so that's coming up. Well, I'll talk about budget, but we're here tonight to talk about that. And I want to tell you, we always do this during our, one of our early street council meetings where we give Jean and her staff the award that they've been receiving from the Government Finance Officers Association Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. We actually got that this week, and I thought it was very appropriate. We'll still do it at the council meeting, but to set up the budget presentation, and particularly with a couple of folks that are new here, I don't want you to think that this is something that we just cook up. I joked earlier with saying I put about hours work into it. They start back in February working on this, and we follow established format. And this is the 23rd consecutive year that our finance department has received this distinguished budget presentation award. And in fact, it is the highest form of recognition in governmental budgeting. Governmental budgeting is the weirdest thing you've ever seen when it comes to from a business standpoint. It's strange. But it is not just something that we do here. We're following nationally recognized standards. The targets that they're looking for in this is it a policy document? Is it a financial plan? Is it an operational guide for our employees? And is it a communications device to convey our citizens where the money's coming from and where it's going? I hope if you read through this, you'll see very clearly where the money is coming from. It is not intended to be a detailed scrutiny of every department's line item budget. We started that back in February, and by April, Loretta and Chris and I and Jackie and Janina were scrutinizing with each department their budget. We go through it line by line. It takes hours and hours, but so that's what the setup is, and that's what they get the award for. Budget is balanced. We're required to have a balanced budget. Our charter requires it, state law requires it. Current expenses occur paid with current revenue. There is no shortfall in that budget. Loretta will go into much greater detail on this, but we're here that there's greater expenditures and revenue. That is the use of savings. Using savings accounts. We do that every year, and that is a basic premise of our budget. We have no capital dollars within our budget. That is one way we keep our tax rate low. So all of our revenue estimates are very conservative. And each year we hope and pray that we go over on revenue and we go under on expenditures. That's where we get our one-time money for the next year. So that is critical. As you're well aware, we started with citizen and resident input. That is through each of our town hall meetings, particularly each town hall meeting. Council input, I hope as we go through tonight's presentation and Saturday, you each see some part that you played in that. There was mention at one of our meetings about we need to try to increase reserves. You'll see that reserves are increased, not specifically named reserves, but it's setting aside money in such a way that it is in reserve and available to you. So that's been addressed. Revenue estimates, always want those to be conservative. Sales tax. Sales tax is slightly higher than property tax this year. That is great news. However, we've preached this for years, but we lived it out in the last few years. That sales tax is extremely volatile. So we do not want to budget that to the penny, because what we know is we don't know.
Because I think we've had one other year, I think it was 2007, that sales tax creeped ahead of property tax.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the economy too, and
So
it went away very quickly.
we are very purposely being conservative in our revenue estimates. And then our employees, you'll see that our employees are the most costly part of our budget, but they are the most critical part. Obviously, our citizens are the most critical thing to us, but our compensation levels that we try to maintain, very proud of those, but they're intended to recruit and retain quality people. And you only get quality service if you have quality people. And I just came from retirement a while ago, and we just reminded of two things from the police department. Number one, I don't know most of them, because it's a bunch of really young people. Same thing in the fire department, but there is some really, really quality people. And that doesn't just happen. I think our service levels set us apart, but what helps us deliver that service is our people. It's kind of humbling when you look at what our folks do, because I have very little impact on what that service delivery is. Every once in a while I get a phone call, or the mayor asked me yesterday to deal with somebody, and I call them and I can help them out a little bit. But day in and day out, those folks, our 379 employees are out there doing great things in that community at the worst possible time to keep alive for the most part. But it is critical that we be able to recruit and retain those folks. And it's gotten very costly to do that, but it takes all 379 of those people to take care of our 53,000 citizens. When we walk through the budget presentation in a little bit, you'll see that we're doing it much cheaper, and that's a good word, much cheaper. And
Much more cost
anybody can cost, much more cost effective, that's right, than anybody around.
You know, something else, talking about the new policeman, one of the ones that came down from New York, I guess he talked to the Citizens Police Academy alumni and was talking about how excited he is to be here, because he spent his entire career working in Harlem with, 2-year-olds cursing at him. And he said, it's so amazing. People here, they respect what I'm doing. They appreciate that I'm here. He said, it's just a whole different world.
Even though he's a Yankee.
Yeah, hey, a lot of respect.
But it's,
I reckon.
and then the last thing is, and it's another huge cost factor for us this year, is again, and that is our insurance. The Affordable Care Act is just killing us. And I always say that is not a political statement, it's a business statement. That thing continues to be phased in. Most people don't even realize that. They just think we have what everybody calls Obamacare. Well, we do. It continues to phase in. There is a huge hit on us this year. There's another huge hit coming next year to us. There's a huge hit coming this year directly to our employees. And actually, probably every one of you, and that is the PPACA fee. The PPACA fee, the Patient Portability Affordable Care Act, something like that. Is that it?
It's close. I couldn't.
Something like that, whatever it is. Obamacare, but what is that monthly for the?
$5 he's got that down.
Yeah, $5.42 per person per month.
Yeah. So when we talk in terms of our premiums going up, that's our premiums. In addition to that, because it is, even though they say it's not, it is a tax, that is assessed directly to our employees. So $5.40 per person per month. On top of that, that is, yeah, that is.
And that per person is not per covered employee, that is for every dependent. So
Right, so
if
if
they
you got 6 people in your
6 people in
family.
your family, you gotta pay that for every
You're paying
family
$100 or
member
whatever.
per month.
Yeah, and there's,
That's
Mr.
not-
Christopherson there who has 13 children, so, yeah.
Absolutely.
So, you know, he just happened to walk in, that wasn't confused, I think we have Wi-Fi problem. But anyway, that is a tax. They say it's not a tax, it is a tax. We're not, the city's not touching part of that. That's correct. It is a tax. So, we're gonna go as quickly or as slowly as we need to. We want everybody to leave here tonight understanding. Our goal, as I said in the letter, would be to pretty well put the budget to bed tonight. But if we don't, it's okay. We would hope to establish our, obviously we can't vote on it, but to have consensus on the tax rate. We're recommending that you reduce it by 1/4 cent. And then our major expenditures, if there's any dangling participles we need to hold over until Saturday morning, we will. Saturday morning, our general thought is, we're supposed to start at 8 o'clock breakfast. If you get there a little early, they'll take your order early. They'll take the order if you get there, though. We won't wait for everyone. If we get to it a little early, we'd like to take y'all on a real quick tour of just 3 or 4 holes of the golf course to let you see, and I'll probably send y'all have already seen this, but the bunker work is going on, how well the greens are going in, 30 minutes maybe at the most, and then we'll kick off the morning with the IMS folks, which is the, I don't know what that stands for, it's the pavement management system that is set on our streets, and they will be here to present that to you. The news is really good for us, but they'll take a good part of the morning. So, I have not seen you get here, so, any questions before we start?
I'd like to make a statement.
Sure.
We have a couple of new council members, and I just want to encourage them as well as the others. There are no stupid questions. Please ask any question that comes to your mind. These people can answer them. And it's very important that you understand this.
Barry, you wouldn't get that question you need.
Thank you. You're using my filter.
I'm sorry about that. I don't want to say anything about the local business that we love, but they just like lost the orders. And you can't just go far further, you can just not real quick. This side's true. Ms. Rachel, why don't you start us off?
Well, before I just jump into the presentation, as Mr. Porter pointed out, we've got a couple of new people, so I do want to just take a minute and kind of walk through the book and the format of the book, and we've always said kind of tab 1 and tab 5 are the most important tabs, but I do want to kind of walk through and talk about what is in the book and just kind of talk about some of the highlights here. And if you go just behind Gary's letter at the beginning in tab 1 to page 1-7, you'll see on 1-7, 1-8, and 1-9, we have provided executive summaries for our 3 largest funds. That's our general fund, our water and sewer fund, and our carbon fund. And what we try to do, Gary said, we scrutinize the individual line item budgets back in, March and April. But we want y'all to be able to see at a snapshot what the budget was last year, but the current year we're working in, 14. We want you to see where the changes are occurring for the upcoming year that we're proposing in both the revenue and the expense side. And then we're wanting you to be able to clearly see capital that we're proposing and then what the proposed budget would be. And so what we've done is we've started from the current year 2014 budget. We have backed out the capital expenditures to bring you down to the net operating, expenditures, the use of dollars for capital expenditures, to bring you down to our operating revenues. And then we will walk you through, and now my slides will go through this, but we'll walk you through all of the major changes to the revenue. And then we'll do the exact same thing on the expenditure side. We will show you how much excess funds that you have available to fund the capital items. As Gary said, we will always make sure and show you that your operating revenues and operating expenditures are balanced. And then we'll show you that we can meet the reserve levels that are required. And then if there's money on top of that, that's how we can then pay for the capital in cash and not have to put that in our baseline budget. So we will do that for all three of the major funds. That will be in the slide presentation. Probably the most important part of the book is on page 1-10 through 1-15. We call this our fund balance summary. This lists all of your operating funds, and it shows you the beginning balance per the audit as of 2014, of fiscal year 2014. Then Janine and Jackie have estimated where our revenues will come in as of September 30th, 2014. They have estimated where our expenditures will come in. They have indicated if there's any budget adjustments necessary, and we typically don't do budget adjustments, but this year we will have a few of those. Those are primarily related to the fact that our sales tax collections are up, therefore our rebates are going to be up. And so the amount that we proposed last year for rebates is not sufficient. So in order to amend that budget, we have to bring that back to you and say we need a budget amendment. And so we have pointed those out here on this fund balance summary. We have also put in the expectation of capital expenditures, and if a capital item did not get completed, and we've had to carry that forward into the 15 budget, we've indicated that as well. And then we'll show you then exactly how we would end 2014, or how we expect we'll end 2014. Now, obviously, in February when we meet, we always come back and tell you whether we were right or wrong, but that's our best guess of how we'll end 2014.
Can I interrupt you?
Sure.
So it says proposed budget adjustment, but that's on the fiscal 14 budget. That's the one, that's not the one we're upcoming, that's the one
That's
we're
the
in.
current. We're going to be coming to you, not only asking you to adopt the new budget, but we're going to ask you to make just a few amendments to the current budget.
Okay.
And only the city council can do that at a fund level, and those that we're asking for are primarily related to the additional expense that we're going to have related to those sales tax rebates. So our revenue came in higher, our expenses are higher, and therefore we have to have your authorization in the form of a budget adjustment to not exceed that budget. I should say to exceed that budget.
And they always do that at the end before you close out?
We do that as a part of this process typically if there is anything to be done.
And that's kind of exemplifies one of our most basic premises, and that is we will not run the budget over. Now, the rebates, obviously, we can't help. And so that's why you do this, and you have the exclusive authority to do that. We do not have the authority, nor will we run the budget over without you knowing about it. We told you sometimes those rebates, which is it's a good thing.
You would want to have that all the time.
Yeah, it's kind of like exceeding your FDIC
Yeah.
limited life. You got a problem, but it's the good news, you got a problem.
So then we drop down, so we're telling you how we think we're going to end 2014, and then we're saying, here are our budget estimates for each fund for 2015. Here are our recommended budgeted expenditures for 2015. We're showing you any capital carryover. That's anything we are saying the director's not going to get that completed by the end of this year, so we'd like to roll that over. Then there are the new capital items for 2015. Those are all detailed in tab 5. Every single number you can tie back to tab 5. And that would be the things that Gary is recommending. We used to not put these in here, but really by our charter, Gary is to present to you a recommended budget, and so based on Wayne's recommendation, he said those should already go in here because that is his recommendation. You certainly have the authority tonight to say, no, I don't want to fund that, or I want to fund more, or to change those, but they're certainly there as his recommendation. So then we come down and we say, if you were to fund everything as recommended, what would the proposed, or what would the projected ending fund balance be September 30th, 2015? And we show you that number. The next thing we have to do is back out any designated reserves. And so if there is a legal designation, or if there's some reserve level that is required by bond covenants or something of that nature, we back that out and we say, okay, then now here is the ending fund balance after we subtract our designated reserves. Then we take that one step further and we say, you as a council have set forth a fiscal policy. And in that fiscal policy, you've said we will maintain operating reserves, and for our governmental funds, those are typically 60 days worth of operating capital. So we can operate, or operating expenses, so we can operate for 60 days in our government funds from that reserve. For our enterprise funds, your fiscal policy says we'll do those at 75 days. And then you have made some variations to that in the CCPD and the EDC and those boards and the carbon fund. You have set some separate reserve levels. So what we've done where it says recommended reserve level for fiscal policies, we've calculated what that reserve level is, and we've demonstrated to you that we're meeting that reserve level. And then we say if there's anything left over and above that, that's what can be spent over and above that, and that's the total amount that's still available after Gary's budget has been recommended to you, and so that there's additional money left. We break that into two components. There's supplemental money and there's capital money. Supplemental money is the amount of revenue, operating revenue, over operating expenses. That means that can be used for ongoing expenses. So if you wanted to hire a person or if you wanted to fund something that was going to continue, that's how much is available for supplemental. The available for capital is simply how much do we have in our fund balance over our required reserves. So the capital money can only be spent for non-recurring items, basically one-time in nature. Now, that's not to say it may not be a program that you would like to see continue, but you may only give authorization for it for 1 year, and then each year you have a choice to either fund it or not fund it. We would consider that to be a one-time appropriation, and that can come from those capital dollars. So you can use supplemental for capital. You cannot use capital for supplemental, because the supplemental program would be, I'm going to hire Janina, and she's got an expectation to continue to work more than 1 year, and so if we're going to give her that job, I have to be able to demonstrate that from ongoing revenues, I can continue to pay her for more than 1 year. So that's an example of how that
But
works.
if you were to hire something that you knew was a temporary position that would never be, let's say there's something at the golf course where because we're shut down, I can't even think what it would be, but you were gonna hire somebody for a 4-month period, and you knew you'd never hire them again, could that come out of the
It could, and we do, I will show you one example here where there is something that even that's ongoing, but as long as we have a strategy, we can demonstrate to you our strategy for the future, and you will see that when we get to our please cease assets. You remember the old COPS grants where the government would give us a grant and they would say, you're gonna go hire 3 new officers so you can add officers on the street. We're gonna give you a grant and that grant's gonna be good for 3 years. And each year for the next 3 years, you still have to be prepared to take 1 officer and put him on your payroll. And the next year take another officer, the next year take another officer. So as long as you have a demonstrated plan that says, we're going to use the fund balance or we're going to use the grant money, and then we have a plan to get them into the regular payroll, you can do that as well. And you'll see that we do have that in one case here in our budget, in this budget that's being recommended. So what you see here is we have these groups by our governmental funds and our internal service, our general fund, our internal service funds, our special revenue funds. Our special revenue funds are legally restricted. They have to be spent for the purpose in which they were intended. We have our enterprise funds. Those are those funds that are intended to be self-supporting. They bring in user fees. The users of the service typically pay for the expenses. That's our enterprise funds. We have our debt service funds. We have a legal obligation to maintain those separately, to transfer the money into those funds, to make the debt payments when they come due. And then we have our reserve funds. And so you will see, if you go down there and you look at the available for supplemental, if you see a negative number there, then that would be something I need to explain to you, because available for supplemental is the difference between our budgeted revenues and our budgeted expenditures, excluding capital. So you can see all of those numbers on page 1-10 are positive. That's telling you we have balanced these budgets. They are balanced budgets. Any excess that we are recommending for capital is coming out of excess fund balance. It's being paid for from excess reserves that are over and above the required limits. The same is true on page 1-11. All of those numbers available for supplemental, all positive, all of your funds are balanced. About 1-12, you see a negative $249,228 in the police seized assets fund. You see we have a budgeted expenditure of $249 and we have no revenue. Well, you see there's a fund balance up there of $711,000. Well, what that is operating like a grant. That is the seized money that we received, that we have added 3 officers. And what you will see in our multi-year budget is we have a plan to pay for those 3 officers at $349,000 for their benefits for this year. And you'll see in the multi-year budget that next year they will be paying for 2 officers, and the following year they'll be paying for 1 officer. And the general fund would be picking up each of those officers as they roll off. So So it's working exactly like the COPS grants that we used to get from the government. And so that is a situation where we clearly have the fund balance to pay for it. And we have a plan then to rotate those into our operating budget in future years. And then if you go.
You asked, well, what is the revenue that kind where you move one into general fund? Police department is a department that's large enough that they always have a vacancy.
Yeah.
So if things really turn bad, we wouldn't fill the vacancy.
Right.
So there's a mechanism in place to take care of this.
Right, we would have to follow that plan, or as Gary says, you wouldn't lay that guy off, when there became a vacancy, you would not fill it, because you would not overrun that budget. Then on page 1-13, you can see everything is positive there. 1-14, you got your GO debt service fund, you see a negative 94,674. The state law requires that you levy a tax rate sufficient to pay your debt. And you're required by law to do that. But also what state law says is if you have excess funds in the debt service fund, that you can use those to help bring down the amount you need from taxes. We have excess fund balance, and so what we're doing is recommending that you use a portion of that to reduce the amount that we need from taxes. So that has a direct effect of lowering the amount needed from the tax rate. And you can use those excess fund balance. I mean, there's no reason to accumulate those excess funds. You should use them to pay that down.
It's actually improper to accumulate.
Yeah, you should not be, you should have a plan to continue to work those down. And so that's another situation where clearly we are using the fund balance that is available in excess of what we need to, and it's a small amount. You're gonna see later, it's $149,000, or it's $150,000 roughly that we were using, but because there's interest earnings and penalties and things like that, the net effect is only $94,000. And then the last one that you're gonna see is on page 1-15, and that's the water and wastewater rate stabilization reserve fund. That would, by its very nature, the rate stabilization fund that you established was seeded with excess money that you had, and then as we get refunds from TRA, and we'll go into that a little bit later, we put those monies into this fund, and then every year you get to make a determination of whether or not you can afford to give the water and sewer customers a rebate on their water bill and help to lower their water bill. That is a one-time commitment on your part, and each year you have the ability to set the rate at the full amount you need to pay the debt, or to pay the operations in the debt. And then you have the right each year to give a rebate based on the amount of money you have available. And so, of course, that rebate then is coming from the accumulated funds. So again, that is a situation where that rebate is a commitment for 1 year only and is coming from that fund balance.
So, and what have we done in the past? Do we use it all up, or do we?
We would not recommend using it all in 1 year. You would typically, anytime you're doing something like that, you'd always want to kind of look out and say, do we have enough to keep this program going for maybe 3 years? And so you can give some this year, some next year, and then basically you have to be prepared to wean out of that. And if you see that you're not going to have replenishing revenues to continue to do it, you want a mechanism to phase out of it. And we look at that in our 5-year budget as well. But in this particular case, this year, we are once again recommending that you give a rebate. In 2014, you gave a 25-cent rebate, and we're also recommending a rebate in 2015 because you have sufficient fund balance to do so. And so it would allow you to, there's no, there's a whole explanation I've got when we get to water and sewer to help with that. But that whole process of how we have to set our rates and how we have to pay for the water from the Trinity River Authority is a little convoluted. And so we wanted a mechanism by which, if we had extra money, we could give a rebate to our customers, and that is this mechanism. So, 1-16, we have a consolidated statement.
Is that a good place to break?
Is it good?
Good break.
Sure, yeah.
That's the last of the fund balance on this. So, but let's get her dinner and we'll pick back up. Maybe talk. Dinner is ready.
The other guy comes in.
Okay, where's she at?
She's at the top.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.